Hello, this is Walt back again, welcoming you back to the new normal again. In our last video, I quoted Mark Twain, who said, "I have suffered many a horrible thing. Some of them actually happened." It's a favorite quote of mine because it's a lot of what we're experiencing. Last video, we talked about grief and the grief process. And so I'm going to get into the fear that is, shall we say, encroaching upon all of us, okay? This thing that's coming from outside of us. Sometimes fear is referred to as false evidence that appears real. False evidence that appears real. And that's very important because it may feel big and real in our bodies, fear, but is it truth? Is it based in truth? And that's where I'm going to get into what are known as cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are faulty thinking that we have. One of the things that we can think of is all or nothing. One of the example is, I'm either at school or we have no school. That is an example of how that can manifest. Of course, we found adaptive ways through technology, which is fantastic. So we have to take those thoughts captive, okay? Anytime these fear-invoking thoughts come upon us, let's pause and take a deep breath, okay? I'll get into that breathing and soothing in a minute. Another one we might get is overgeneralizing. The words all or nothing might come into that. Mental filtering, where we only see the negative and don't focus on the positive, and we'll be talking about how we can counteract these as we go along. And with that is disqualifying the positive. Okay? Mind reading is a very dangerous thing. I've learned that especially from marriage and having kids. And even being a therapist, I might think somebody's experiencing something, and instead of being suggestive, I am exploratory and say, well, help me understand what that means. If this fear comes along, we can say, help me understand better. What is the truth, right? Fortune telling is another thing. We might think that, oh no, we're going to be shut down for 6 months and then our economy will crash and everything will fall into chaos. We do not know that. That is fortune telling. That is tomorrow, we need to stay in the present. And we'll talk about breathing to stay in the present. Okay? Catastrophizing. I think my previous example was a good example of catastrophizing with fortune telling. Okay? Magnifying or minimizing. Magnifying the virus itself. And so people are rushing out and buying a year's worth of toilet paper. Or minimizing and say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I can still go to Price Chopper and shop. And we've got to meet that thoughtful balance in there. Emotional reasoning. We have seen that in our own lives, if you have any awareness at all, where we don't stop to take in the facts and the truth. Another one is shoulds. I should do this, I should do that. That's where a lot of the hoarding can come into play. Fear-driven should. Okay? There's a phrase that says, if you hear should, you should think shame. I should have already mastered everything. Or I should hide all my excrement. Or we should purchase everything that is in the store, right? The other is labeling or mislabeling something, being very conclusive and concrete in our thinking. This is bad, this is good. William James, the father of modern psychology, said, there is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. He falls right in line with these cognitive distortions. We have to be careful. Personalization. If something happens between myself and another human being, I may think I'm at fault or they did it because of something faulty in me. That's personalization, and that needs to be explored. Jumping to conclusions. How many times have you seen somebody finish somebody else's sentence and it not be right? It's a perfect example of jumping to conclusions. So what do we do with all this? Here's what we do. We breathe. That helps us slow down and calm down so we can grow up into our logical prefrontal cortex. And then we can get close to the situation and try to understand it with humility. Being skeptical, but understand it, listen. And then try to serve. When we talked about grief, one of the best ways to overcome grief is serving others. And so that's one of the things in getting community, trying to look around and see who needs help. See who you might help out in a physical way, or need something from the grocery store, or older or younger people that might need your help. And then we'll talk about the breathing and the calming down in our next video. Thank you. Grace and peace.